Hello and welcome everyone to the Sense Making in a Changing World show. My name is Morag Gamble and this is our special urban agriculture series. Each week during the month of November, collaborating with Sustain Australia with Urban Agriculture Month, we're speaking to someone who's deeply involved in an amazing urban agriculture project. And today I'm speaking with Hilary Hoggett, who's based in Melbourne, and more specifically the area of Fawkner, with her project, and it's called Fawkner Food Bowls, and she describes it as a hyper-local food project, and it's a delight to welcome you here today. Thank you for being here, Hilary.
No worries, thanks for having me.
So I've always talked about the importance of local food. Maybe we just start right there as like hyper-local. What does that mean, and how did you come to really describing your project in that way?
Well, really, it came about as something that we wanted to do as a community project that was for locals, by locals, and that was really looking at just trying to take care of our own community, basically, and ideally that kind of thing. There's one in every suburb, and everybody helps everybody else to learn and share and that sort of thing. In Fawkner, we've had quite a lot of problems with things like food insecurity. I think at one point down the lockdowns, there was something like 1 in 4 households were food insecure, which meant that, they ran out of money to buy food and couldn't buy more. And it also suffers from being a bit of a food desert as well. So it was particularly important for us to try and address that. And so we basically, Sally Beattie and Kelly Gillespie got together in, I think it was 2017, along with help from Morag Council, and eyed off this old bowling green. And Kelly's got a horticulture background and Sally's got a community development background. And so it was the perfect match, basically, to sort of get something started in the community. And this old bowling green hadn't been used in something like 20 years. And so they got together, they spoke to council, they spoke to the Bowls Club. Everybody was all on board with the idea that this could be used as some form of community garden, but we weren't really sure how it would work or anything like that. And I got involved when I think they had their first sort of, community call out to see who might be interested in getting involved. So I got involved very early on, and myself and one other person, the 4 of us, then started the committee. And then we officially launched halfway through 2018. So there was a whole lot of, just things like mowing, because there was an entire bowling green that was basically just overgrown grass. So
what got you involved? Like, you've studied, you're a landscape architect, and what drew you to be involved in an urban agriculture hyperlocal community garden project on a bowling green? Like, what drew you?
Well, so when I moved to Fawkner just before that, and was keen to, see what community was around that I could sort of, get involved with. And that popped up quite quickly. And at that point, I actually didn't know. That was before I decided to study landscape architecture. So I was actually still working at a bank as an audiovisual technician, which is something entirely different. But yeah, I don't know, I saw the spark and I got very excited, and I saw, the potential of this place, I guess. And I've been involved ever since.
So who now it's set up, and it kind of happened all throughout COVID, as you were saying, and addressing food security. How did that come about? How did you actually get this food system up and running in the middle of COVID and get that food distributed out to the people that were needing it? How did that work?
Well, so during COVID, there was actually a project that was run in conjunction with Fair Share Fair, that was GenRay, and that was when Sally Beattie was president. And basically, we started a project called Fawkner Commons, which was all about the distribution, selling and distribution of food and growing quite intensively during the lockdown. So it was specifically a lockdown response, and we had a number of grants. I can't tell you off the top of my head who those grants were from, but there was some from Vic Health, some from Moreland Council, and possibly other entities as well. Yeah, there was a huge amount of activity actually during lockdowns, particularly because we were considered a primary producer, and so we were able to operate during those lockdowns and grow intensively. So that was.
So you're considered a primary producer. Was that as a primary food producer, as an urban agriculture farm? Who designated you that title of being a primary producer?
I'm not sure, to be honest. But we got an exemption, so.
Wow. So you were able to have people come out and be farming outside. And how would you distribute the food back to the people that need? Like, who gets the food that's grown on the farm? And is it a paid thing, or do people get boxes as part of a community service program? How does that work?
So at that time, the Fawkner Commons project had a basically like a food with dignity program, and so there was some food at the time which we would grow, which would actually go to community pantries. There's a crazy amount of community pantries in Fawkner, I think 6, something like that, which gives you a bit of an idea of the need, because they all get completely hammered. And then there was some things that we grew that were distributed through the Fawkner Commons online shop, which was run through the Open Food Network. And so that was being sold, but it was being sold as cheaply as we possibly could. And we were able to pay a couple of farmers to be there to do that farming intensively during the lockdown. So that was pretty valuable, because that's very rare.
So how many farmers do you employ to look after that? And is that enough to maintain the farm, or do you also need volunteer help to keep it going?
So at times we're 100% volunteer run, and our committee is all volunteer and everything else. But occasionally we have grants that will pay for someone to do various aspects. So at the moment we have a couple of grants through Moreland Council through their Food Hub initiative, one of which is with Merry Food Hub, where we're basically growing culturally relevant food that can be distributed through the Merry Food Hub, which is also operates through the Open Food Network and also through a in-person market stall near our senior citizens centre, in the middle of Fawkner. And another one working with growing farmers, which is another initiative that Sally Beattie also helped co-found, which was looking at integrating the various different backyard farms that Growing Farmers runs. I think 3/4 of them at least are backyards in Fawkner. So that's a whole other project, which I won't go into, but there's a grant to look at how the sort of the primary producers within that within our hyperlocal food system can work together to share assets and that sort of thing. So we've got a little bit of money to pay people for things like propagation as well as harvesting and a little bit of farm maintenance. But generally speaking, the farm is maintained by volunteers.
Yeah.
So we do get a little bit of money here and there. That's a bonus.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about the Open Food Network? You've mentioned that a few times, that you participate with that. So is that a Melbourne-wide network? Can you tell us anything about that?
Oh, that's like an online shop sort of thing. I don't have a lot to say about the Open Food Network because I'm not very involved in that side of things. But basically it's a way for, smaller farms and things like that to be able to sort of cut out middle people and sell their produce.
Yeah, excellent. And maybe, I mean, you mentioned it, this backyard farming project. Maybe we could just like bring that in a little bit as well. Like, what do you know about that? So there's a network of people who are growing food in their backyards that are collaborating, or someone is a farmer and goes and farms people's backyards. What is that one?
So the Backyard Farmers Project. So the organisation is Growing Farmers, and you should look them up because they're amazing. And they're another hyper-local farming initiative. And basically they operate where they have farms. They basically link in a farmer that wants to learn how to farm but doesn't have land with someone that has land that is not being used, like a backyard or whatever it might be, that they would like to see be productive. And so they link that up, and they actually run, I think it's a year-long series of sessions to provide mentorship, essentially, to the farmers. And they go on tours. I think they went to Harcourt at one point, and they, all over the place, just different aspects of farming for people that just want to sort of like, put a toe in and, see if it suits them, kind of thing. I think it's been running for a couple of seasons now. Actually, one of our volunteers is also one of the Growing Farmers farmers. So they're growing on someone else's plot of land. It's a lovely way to see land, that is otherwise unused or unruly, be used for something really valuable. And then basically
idea.
Of farms where that produce can then be sold in various different ways.
Yeah.
However, they can decide how they deal with the produce, I think.
So as a landscape architect, and I know this is not a very easy question to answer, but as a landscape architect, what is your interface with urban agriculture and urban food growing, and what do you see as the possibilities that could merge? Where would you like to see landscape architecture and urban agriculture intersect?
Oh, tricky question. I think building on that, the previous idea that we were just talking about using unused land to be productive, I think could be really valuable. Particularly, there's some plots that you see around where, it's been fenced off, but no one's using it. And no one's going to build on it for, possibly 10 years. So, how could those spaces be used in an intermediate kind of way just to help support, locals, whether they be, sort of like even in a temporary way. So, perhaps they're, a temporary orchard or, whatever it might be. I'm not really sure. I feel like there's certainly around here, there's a really rich older generation of people, and actually quite a lot of newer migrants as well, that have a passion for gardening and for food growing, and for really wanting to, get involved and share their culture and share their food from their culture and things like that. So I think, like that's part of the wonderful thing about the Fawkner Food Bowls actually, is that it provides a kind of a hub space where people can come and, we have people that will have something growing that we didn't even realize that you could eat a certain portion of it, but it's eaten in a certain culture, and someone will come in and say, oh, did you realize that you could eat the shoots and stems of this plant? And then they'll go away, and then they'll come back next week, and I'll have cooked up a dish with those things and are so eager for us to try it.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And, when you start to look at that, you realize that you could actually grow probably 10 times as much you thought possible in a small space, just by simply seeing differently what is food and identifying different parts of the plant. It's so much that's there that we overlook most of the time, I think, and that cultural aspect is so important. So is that why there is so much food insecurity in that part of the area, because it's a lot of recent migrants? Or like, why is Fawkner so food insecure as a community.
Yeah, look, it's got a really low socioeconomic population, or demographic, I should say. And it's only been more recently, like it was a sort of a cheaper place to live until, ago, basically. And there's quite a large Islamic population as well. There's a couple of really good Islamic schools. And so there's quite a lot of people from non-English speaking Black backgrounds that live in the area as well. And it makes the place it's such a vibrant place to live. But yeah, there are a lot of issues just because, it's generally a poorer place to live, I guess.
So with you have the market garden and people are sharing food. How else does the Fawkner Food Bowls become a hub for community, a place where people meet and share? Like, do you have celebrations or events or learning spaces where people can really engage in that way?
So a lot of what we do is we're there every Sunday, and we all kind of learn off each other. So a lot of the people that have come in, might have known a tiny bit about food gardening when they came, and a couple of years down the track are now teaching new people that come into the garden how to grow certain things. And I think because we grow in a market garden style, so we don't have private plots at Food Bowls. We all work on communal rows. And so I think that the sharing is inherent, therefore, which I think makes the space very valuable. And it also helps sort of increase, I guess, a sort of spatial agency with people, having some collective ownership over the space as well, rather than, a sort of a private little 1-by-1 plot that is, the bit that you look after sort of thing. So we also do run events. If we do run anything big, it has to be grant funded. So it's a little bit sporadic depending on, where we can get money from where. But we did run an amazing garden festival about, I think it was about April or May this year. And it was just gorgeous. We made harvest monsters. And we had all kinds of, gardening workshops. We had some local artists that had a sort of maze exhibition that they'd made out of, scrap material and things that was sort of, in the middle of the space. We had music. We had a beautiful mural by a local artist, Hira Salman, who she has a Pakistani background, and she was inspired by the Karachi truck art, and she painted a mural on one of the walls that is in a Karachi truck art style, but with vegetables from the garden. It's just gorgeous. So yeah, we do run quite a lot of workshops as well on, various aspects of food growing. A lot of particularly the food growing ones tend to be run by Kelly, because she's the certified horticulturalist and she's our farm manager as well. But yeah, lots of people get involved. We've been trying to include more and more the cooking and eating aspects as well. Like we've run a number of, zero waste workshops and stuff where we'll have people pick things from the garden, cook it in the garden, and then we eat it in the garden, and that whole, it's just beautiful to be able to do those three elements at once. And just to be able to share that with everyone. I think that's really special.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's such a beautiful thing to be in that environment, know exactly where the food's coming from. I wonder what happens on the other days. If you're there just on a Sunday, what happens for the rest of the week? Is it just locked up and looking after itself, or are people coming through and taking care of the gardens in between time?
So we have a watering roster. So there's someone that comes in each day to make sure that the babies get fed, basically. And we have people that come in to do more intensive farming for the grants that I mentioned earlier. So for propagation and for a little bit of farm management and that kind of thing. harvesting. Other than that, I think it's generally just the Sundays that it's sort of open to the public. The rest of the time, it's, I think there's some people that, really know what they're doing, and they will occasionally sort of pop in during the week to do a specific task. But in terms of public access, we're just once a week. Again, just because we rely on volunteer hours for that.
So is it fenced off? Like, do you need a key to get in, or is it open for people to wander through? Or
it is fenced off. Because it's council-owned land, but it's connected to the adjoining Bowls Club.
So do you get access to the Bowls Club facilities for education, or is it you just got the field?
We do have a sort of memorandum of understanding with the Bowls Club, and we have a good working relationship with them. So we do use the clubhouse for things every now and again, and they're a great little space too. They actually have someone who does meals every Friday or every second Friday using, I think, pretty local produce as well.
So there's still active bowling greens there as well? Like, how did it come that this particular bowling green is not being used? I mean, is there many like that are around that people can access? And
well, I think the Fawkner Bowling Club was struggling with membership for a little while, and so they couldn't afford to the upkeep of all the 3 greens.
Okay, right.
And so that one, it hadn't been used in something like, I think it was 15 years.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of time.
So it was a long time. Yeah.
So your arrangement then is with the club or with the council? I'm just asking this because if people were seeing space in their urban area and they're wanting to approach, like, who would you approach first? Would you go to your council?
So it's council land, but the lease is with the Bowls Club. Yeah. But in terms of people coming in, they would contact us directly in terms of getting access to the space. Yeah.
No, I was thinking, like, if someone else saw a Bowls Club or a piece of vacant land somewhere in their city and wanted to get started, like, were you there? You were there as part of that starting process. What were some of the things that you think made your application or your project success to get it over the ground? I'm asking this too because I know a lot of groups have spent a lot of years trying to actually just access land, and it's taken them a lot of energy, even just to get to that first step of stepping onto the place they're going to begin. So what was your process like and made it successful, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think that there was definitely a lot of encouragement from council. The Bowls Club weren't using that space anyway, so I guess having an active space for them was probably safer than having a overgrown nightmare. So particularly the secretary, Vicky Kennedy, has been integral to the Fawkner Food Bowls being able to function. But I think there was a want for it, or for a place like that, from so many different angles that it has worked very well. That's not to say that it hasn't been difficult in terms of, particularly some like infrastructure stuff. When you're relying entirely on grants, that can be tricky. I think quite early on, so we sort of got kicked off through a neighbourhood project, which was run through a group called Co-Design. And so we got an initial $10,000 to sort of launch something. I think at the time we launched like a small children's garden within the space, but the rest of it was all just grass at that point. And so that really allowed us, and that co-design project was all about that. I think there was 6 or 8 different community groups that were matched with their local councils, and it was all about trying to, cut through red tape and how could council make life easier for communities and vice versa to actually get things done.
So who's Co-Design? Like, is that an independent group that was facilitating this?
So co-design, I'm trying to remember how they started up. I don't even know if they're still operating, but I think they had a very large grant through the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation to run this neighbourhood project. And this was back in, I think it was 2017. Yeah, I wasn't involved. Well, I did go to some of the sessions, but I wasn't involved in the initial sort of setup of it. So I can't give you that much background information.
No, I'm just asking because I think it's really interesting looking at this idea of, you know, how we can facilitate the startup of these projects so that each individual group doesn't get stuck in the same thing of trying to sort of go from the very beginning. And it sounds like this co-design process is really very interesting. So I wanted to, in what way are you connected with a broader network of local urban agriculture projects? So do you, when you're there, I mean, it's a hyperlocal project, but do you also have a sense of facing outwards towards connecting with other local projects, or is it just a local project and that's it, and you just go and garden and share food? And how does it feel do you have a sense of it being a broader urban agriculture movement? Do you feel part of that, or is it just we need food locally, let's just get in and do this?
I mean, our sort of core goals are to address the hyperlocal issues, but we do have relationships with other organisations. Mind you, quite a lot of the ones that we have strong relationships with are also Fawkner based. So we have really strong working relationships with the Merry Food Hub, who are food distribution, and also growing farmers who do the backyard farms, which is all Fawkner based. So we have strong working relationships really, really locally. But then we do speak to some of the other community gardens around Marybeck, I should be saying Marybeck now, as well as having links to some businesses where we get things like, there's a chocolate roastery where we take their cocoa husks, for example, and they're in Brunswick.
What does it smell like, the cocoa husk? Do they smell
nice?
That's
Delicious.
a bit mean, like going through your gut, smelling all the cocoa husks.
We try to, I guess, as part of our kind of regenerative farming techniques, we try to, use as much material from the local community as we can in terms of, composting and mulch and various other things. So we really try to sort of link in as much as we can.
So what are you using for mulch? Is that the cocoa husks?
So the cocoa husk we use for the pathways.
Yeah.
And that breaks down beautifully, by the way. And also the snails don't like to crawl over it, so it's really good between rows as well. We actually don't use a lot of mulch on our actual raised garden rows because we are really windy there and there's not a lot of windbreak. And so if we put anything down, it just blows away. But we do have large mulched areas that we get from sometimes council will give us big deliveries of mulch when they've just done a big tree pruning or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds amazing. And I love that idea that what you said right at the start, that we do focus on the we do focus on the hyperlocal, and the idea of having something like this in every neighborhood that we can walk to. That's, wouldn't that be amazing to actually, have people who are really looking at, and then that whole circular economy of the waste. I mean, it addresses so many different issues, from social justice issues to climate issues to, everything really. So I also noticed, just as a one kind of last sort of question, that I wanted to find out about your seeds. You have a seed exchange, is that, or a seed bank or a seed network of some sort? Like, where do you get your seeds or your plants from, your local seeds? Is that hyper local too?
So we do save seed. So a lot of our crops are open pollinated, and we save what we can. We do still need to buy some stuff. And in terms of sort of seed library, we don't quite have anything like that set up yet, but it's certainly on the cards.
Yeah, I know that even some of the libraries up around where we are, you can go in there and they have community gardens around the libraries, and you can go in, you get your books, you get some plants like herbs to take home and some seeds that have come out of the community garden. It's such a lovely thing just to have that beautifully local plants that are locally adapted to that particular environment. And of course, being a global reason too. How did you go with the floods? Are you flooded out where you are? Is that affecting
you? Our local Mary Creek has been quite bloated, but the garden actually hasn't been too bad because it's a bowling green. It's actually sitting on a foot of sand.
Oh, okay.
But the rest of Fawkner has a clay soil problem, and and our garden has a sandy soil. So it's quite odd.
Yeah. Well, that was lucky, because I was a bit worried about all of the gardens all the way around, you know, the edges of all these rivers and things, you know, with everything that's been going on lately. So that's good news to hear that you're all good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find out more about this project, the Fawkner Food Bowls? What would be the website or resources that they can go and check out what you're doing and see photos of it as well?
Yeah. So there's our website, which is fawknerfoodbowls.com. But also we have a Facebook page. If you just look up Fawkner Food Bowls, that's probably our most up-to-date place to check us out, I think.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope people have been listening, you know, feel inspired to see how to find a space in their own local environment, and just to see, you know, if you can find it. Just takes a few people, really, doesn't it, who have a shared vision and a conversation with the local council, local organisation. I mean, walking around with a kind of an urban agriculture lens on, finding those spaces that can be transformed. And maybe it's a collective backyard, maybe it's a commons space like that, or even in a school, there's places as well. I know there's lots of different possibilities. So thank you so much, Hilary, for joining me. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in amplifying these possibilities in urban agriculture. It's an absolutely essential thing that I think we all need to be focusing on. So yeah, thank you.